Okay. So we're going to look into kind of just surveying part of Proverbs, and we're going to pick up where we left off from 2 classes ago as we were kind of surveying the book of Proverbs. My hope is that at the end of this class, the 2 things that you will have is you'll have for the doctrine of wisdom, an understanding of how Solomon spoke into different things concerning all the different things that we encounter, but also that we would survey the book of Proverbs. The difficult thing is in a limited amount of classes to cover so much real estate when it comes to the book of Proverbs. So that's the reason why there's a lot of times that I'm calling out verses and we're just reading a part of it, but I encourage you to go back and to read it in its entirety, because if you were to hear me speak on a regular basis when I'm not teaching a class, you'd realize that I'm not somebody that jumps from verse to verse to verse, because I want to capture the whole thing. And so I encourage you to read the verses leading up to the verse that I've given and the verses afterwards. But let's see here. We're going to look at Proverbs chapter 8, and chapter 8 is kind of a recount of what we saw very on in the book of Proverbs, and read the first few verses and you'll see the similarity there. It says, "Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She stands in the top of high places, by the way in the places of the path. She cries at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips." So that's getting into Proverbs chapter 8. So we're back to a place of wisdom is calling out. One thing that I love about the book of Proverbs, some people would find this as frustrating, but there's a lot of redundancy as it comes in the book of Proverbs, because you'll see, and you'll see it in some of the things that we're, when we're breaking out the different discussions, is that it seems like he's saying the same thing and he's saying it different ways. And I really relate this to the early learning of scriptures is the passing it down of telling stories, and how important it is that, especially if you think about when you're dealing with children, as Solomon is, as he's writing these pages, that, how many of us only say something once and that's the only time we say it? No, we say it every time we get a chance. And so it's back in Proverbs chapter 8 saying that, wisdom is calling out, and the story is that, as we read there in verse 6, or verse 5, it says, "O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart." That wisdom is not discriminating, that wisdom wants everyone to embrace wisdom, for everyone to hear and for their paths to be changed. And so as a result, not only is this a great thing that no matter where you find yourself on the pathway, this message is for you, but it's also an understanding of the fact that we shouldn't write anybody off, that we should always have the door open so that somebody may hear and believe and be changed. And so back to wisdom is calling out. If you look down towards the end of that chapter, starting in verse 21, it says, "That I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, I will fill their treasures. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there were no depths, I was brought forth, and when there were no fountains abounding with water, before the mountains were settled, before the hills, I was brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world, when he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth, when he established the clouds above. And what's such an incredible thing to me with that chapter 8 is that you get into it is the fact that wisdom abounded from the beginning. And you go, okay, well, that's kind of cool that from the beginning, before there were mountains, before the waters, before anything, there was wisdom. But what I see in that is the story that God had a plan for us. God did not lack wisdom, yet he created wisdom because of the fact that he knew that people would need wisdom. And so he had a plan for us. And what another part of this story is in chapter 8 is that you have to understand that no matter where you are and no matter where people we encounter are, that God and wisdom have been calling out to them all along. And so what we're doing when we encounter those people is we are either helping them along the path of righteousness, or we're, as Paul describes it, sometimes we're watering, some of us are planting, some of us are seeing the harvest reaped, but, that we're all a part of that process, but that God's not done, as the water comes down from the heavens and does what it's supposed to do, so the word of God does not return void, but it accomplishes the purpose for which it was sent. I mean, the greatest example of that is that you can be in the center of a dry and barren land, and you can cut open a plant and you can find water, because the water is accomplishing the purpose. And the same is true with the word of God, that the word of God is there and that we need to allow that to be applied. So wisdom, those who hate wisdom, people who follow the rules of wisdom, basically from chapter 8, will be happy and they will be filled. But people who hate wisdom are in love with death. And those who find her will be rewarded by God. So, Proverbs chapter 8 is a calling out of wisdom, and that wisdom was around from the beginning, and that people who follow after it will be filled, and the people who don't are in love with death. Proverbs chapter 9. Wisdom has built a house with 7 pillars. She slaughtered the animals, mixed the wine for a feast, and prepared the table. Listen to this. Wisdom calls and tells those who are simple and without sense to turn into her house and eat from her table. They will grow into maturity and attain insight. So, when we talk about the different types of people that are in the Word, the simple and the fools and the wisdom and the wise, recognizing that, as it stated in chapter 8, that there's a call out there for people to, if you've never grabbed onto it before, grab onto wisdom now. Listen to these words, come in that you may eat at the table. Then you can grow and attain insight. Then here's some directions for when we're encountering people. It says, if you correct someone who scoffs, the scoffer will scoff at you. If you try to rebuke a wicked person, you just end up getting hurt. But a wise person responds positively to a tactful rebuke. Wise and righteous people are capable of taking instruction, and it helps them grow even wiser. The foolish woman is a loud, ignorant lady who sits around the door of her house or in the high places in the town, and she tries to divert the simple into her house. and urges them to steal food to eat. But in reality, the dead live in her house, and her guests are inhabitants of the underworld. That as it paints the picture for us, Lady Wisdom is calling out, and she's calling people to come into the table to eat and to be fed. But in contrast to that is foolishness calling out and trying to divert people to come into their place. But in that place is death. And so the biggest thing to take away from chapter 9 is to understand that, just as we said last week, and this is kind of a recounting of that, is that both wisdom and foolishness are calling out. And it's to begin to listen to the voice of wisdom and to understand the directions of wisdom, and so that shapes our decision making instead of foolishness. Proverbs chapter 10, the sayings of King Solomon. Wise children bring joy to their parents, but foolish children cause them grief. Even if wickedness gains you treasures, it won't benefit you, but righteousness saves you from death. God feeds righteous people, but lets the wicked go. Lazy hands lead to poverty, but a busy hand makes you rich. A true child gathers crops, and one who sleeps during harvest is not he. Babbling fools are ruined in time. People who babbling fools are ruined in time, and people like wind cause trouble, but people who know how to offer a proper rebuke can make peace. Here's something I brought up earlier. Lies and slander mask inner hatred or foolishness. Using too many words means transgression is at hand, because prudent people restrain their speech. The righteous will be rewarded and satisfied. The wicked will not. So what we begin to see is that in chapter 10, and if you think about Solomon sitting down and counting these things out to the children, the first thing he says in chapter 10 is that, hey, if you're children and you are doing wise things, then you are a joy to your parents. But if you're foolish, you cause grief. And this is something that is something that's echoed in other chapters, but this is another place of grabbing a hold of wisdom, is understanding that that money or substance shouldn't be what you're grasping after. That those things should come from dealing honestly with people and going after wisdom and going after righteousness. Then those things will bring a reward with it. But when you look at the picture of this, it says, even if wickedness gains you treasures, it won't benefit you, but righteousness saves you from death. It's the story of Solomon, that God looked down upon him and found favor with Solomon. And he asked Solomon, ask me what you will. And Solomon said, give me wisdom. And he said, because he asked for wisdom, he also gave him everything that comes with wisdom. So is it true with righteousness. And this is another story. And if you look at the lazy hand leads to poverty, but a busy hand makes you rich, is to understand that there's something innate inside of man that wants the reward without the work. I want to be able to benefit but not do anything to have received that. And so the story begins to lay out the line that you know what, if you set yourself to a path, the reward is in the end of that path, But if you try to seek out the prize without the work, that even if you get the prize, it brings no fulfillment in you. So, lazy hands lead to poverty. Lies and slander mask inner hatred or foolishness. This is something we were talking about before, that, if you understand the heart of men, and you understand that when somebody is lying or someone is slandering, that what they're doing is they're just revealing the nature of who they are. And so it helps with two things. Number one, it helps you put a mark and a hedge around that person to make sure that you understand that that person is an enemy to your to what God has in store for you, but that you also understand that that's masking something that's deeper inside of them. And so when you understand that, wisdom will help you deal with people that you encounter, so that you could say, oh, okay, I see. As I said, a few weeks ago, that, I was raised by a teacher who, her thing was always, what did you learn from this? Which, could be very frustrating, when you're growing up. But then when you get older and you look back on that and you go, man, there was some really things I learned from this. And what I believe that the book of Proverbs, one of the great things that the book of Proverbs does, is it helps you begin to evaluate not only your life, but to evaluate the circumstances around you and the people that are around you, and to begin to look at that and say, what would wisdom tell me in this place? And one thing that it does, and especially if you ever minister at the altar, or you have counseling opportunities for counseling ministry, things like that, one thing that the book of Proverbs will lay out for you is to begin to see the hidden agendas of people, and to be able to unmask people. And that's what Proverbs chapter 10 is saying, that if you understand that people who are lying and people who are slandering, that's a mask of foolishness, it kind of helps you unmask that, that people are, what people are going through. So, using too many words means transgressions is at hand. Prudent people restrain their speech. Proverbs chapter 11. Know this, that God, in fact, let's just read it. In verse 1, it says, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. God hates it when you try to manipulate and scam other people. That's Proverbs 1 says, 11:1 says that's an abomination to God, but a just weight is his delight. And the reason why I believe that if you understand that this life that we live is that, as we said earlier, that we're stewards of this life, that God's given you this life. What did you do with it? It's the parable of the talents. I gave you this life, and what did you give to the kingdom as a result of that life that you give? But if you understand that this life, as James says, is like a vapor, that it's here and gone, and that there is something that this life is a preparation for, and it's for an eternity with him, that as some people have put, we're training for reigning, that we understand that if I manipulate you because I'm make you think that you're getting one thing that you're not really getting, that I may get away with it for a moment. And you know what? Maybe you never find out. You know, maybe because of the circumstances, you just got away with one. But the thing is that the whole purpose of wisdom is to prepare you for a lifestyle that not only brings fulfillment here, but prepares you for what God has in store for you. And so a lot of times we have to learn those lessons by walking through them again. Verse 2, when pride comes, then comes shame, but with the lowly is wisdom. Now here's some bullet points from Proverbs chapter 11. Gossip and belittling others is for fools. That's not your job. Let the fools do that, because that's going to bring death. Gracious women receive honor. And for a person who has everything on the outward, but have no sense to them, is like a ring in a pig's snout, a gold ring in a pig's snout. That it's just adornment, but there's no depth there. Giving freely doesn't necessarily cause you to become poor. And being a miser won't save you from ruin. The key is being generous. You know, there's a reason why when we give, it says give as unto the Lord, and it says give with a generous heart. You know, the reason why is because if it's some, you know, I've heard a lot of people, you know, talk about giving and giving to others, and it's just kind of a principle that begrudgingly I'm going to come and I'm going to give. But the thing is that what comes, the generosity that comes through us, is then mirrored from God. One should seek good instead of favor. And here, once again, as we said before, if you seek good, then good will bring favor. Verse 5 says, the righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but transgressors shall be taken in their own knot. When a wicked man dies, his expectation shall perish, and the hope of the unjust men perish. The righteous is delivered out of trouble, and the wicked comes in his stead. A hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered. When it goes well with the righteous, the city rejoices, and when the wicked perish, there is shouting. By the blessing of the upright, the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. He that is void of wisdom despises his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his peace. A talebearer reveals secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit conceals the matter. Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors there is safety. So Proverbs 11, 13, and 14 is talking about not only how we're supposed to conduct ourselves, but it's also, once again, seeing people and who they are that are around you. So if you see somebody who cannot keep things to themselves, or you see somebody who is quick to fall into retelling things, then understand the person that's around you is not faithful. Where there's no counsel, people fall, but there's a multitude of counselors, there's safety. You know, I always understand, and what I feel like Solomon's bringing out here is, you need to need to have different people that are speaking into you that they're listening to, so that you can begin to shape those things. When you're making decisions, that you bring that to people, that you're not just listening to one side of it, but you're listening to the different sides of it, so that you can come to the best decision. He that is surety for a stranger shall smart for it, and he that hateth sureship is sure. Let me bring another one up there. Whoever puts up security for a stranger will surely suffer, but whoever refuses to shake hands in a pledge is safe. And so this is once again dealing with people, and it's kind of like putting up surety is like co-signing with somebody. That you're putting your name on the line for someone, and when you put your name on the line for someone, then eventually you're going to suffer the consequences of that. But whoever refuses to shake hands in a pledge is safe. And, it kind of goes on to a thing, don't swear by, heaven that's God's footstool, or by the earth, which is his workmanship. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't set yourself out, I promise or I swear. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. A kind-hearted woman gains honor, but ruthless men gain only wealth. Those who are kind benefit themselves, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves. A wicked person earns deceptive wages, but the one who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. Truly the righteous attain life, but whoever pursues evil finds death. And then finishing up with that chapter, whoever brings ruin on their family will inherit only wind, and the fool will be a servant to the wise. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and the one who is wise saves lives. If the righteous receive their due on earth, how much more the ungodly and the sinner? And so it's laying out a picture there for the way that we lay out our pathway and the people that we encounter. Chapter 11 is understanding that we have kind of the best understanding of it is the parable where the master calls for a debt to be paid, and the servant comes in and says, I had the best intention, I can't pay it. And it says that the master forgives this large debt, and that he immediately goes out and he finds somebody that owes him, and he has no mercy on the person. And so when I think about Proverbs chapter 11, it's a thing of understanding that we should be a conduit for God's grace and for God's mercy and for his wisdom, and that as we act it out around each other, so it will be acted out to us. Proverbs chapter 12, this chapter continues praising righteousness and handing out the consequences of wickedness. The wise and righteous don't mind and actually benefit from being rebuked, but the wicked don't. And for the main consequence of that is that they walk out that pathway to wherever the end is. This chapter continues to bring up earlier points. Being good is something that brings reward to you, and when you act foolishly, it brings about harm on your life. Once again, it's good wives, speaking well to other people, not having wicked speech, celebrating good It celebrates making good decisions and not falling away to the thoughts of your own heart. Okay, Proverbs chapter 13. This chapter goes through another understanding of children. So if we look here at Proverbs chapter 13, verse 1, it says, "A wise son heeds his father's instruction, but a mocker does not respond to rebukes. From the fruit of their lips people enjoy good things, but the unfaithful have an appetite for violence. Those who guard their lips preserve their lives, but those who speak rashly will come to ruin." That's 13, 1 through 3. And 4 is a sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. The righteous hate what is false, but the wicked make themselves a stench and bring shame on themselves. The light, verse 9, "The light of the righteous shines brightly, but the lamp of the wicked is snuffed out. Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice." So, as you can see in the first part of Proverbs chapter 13, and what we talked about earlier this evening, is that when you're recounting this thing, that if you were to read a proverb a day, you would begin to see the same things over and over again. And the best way to kind of classify that is understanding of walking things out with kids. You know, when you're walking into the street and you go, "What do we do?" Well, we look both ways, okay? And you step out into the road. And when you encounter somebody, you say, "Hey, you need to remember that you look them in the face, that you look in their eyes, that you stand up tall, that you shake their hand firm." All the things that you don't say once, you say it over and over again. Chapter 13 talks about the fact that wealth is not the answer to all problems. Can cause many difficulties. More money sometimes brings more problems. While being poor, you have less. You can leave you content with simplicity. We live in a time where everything is about the what can I get next? What can I get next? And there was an old movie that came out not too several years back, and it was called The Joneses. Did anybody ever see that? And the idea is that these marketers came up with a great idea that they actually got a family, called them a man and a woman, and called them the Joneses, and hired them to come into this neighborhood. And they kept giving them stuff, boats, cars, and things of substance and things like that. And literally it was keeping up with the Joneses. And people would say, "Oh, they live in this neighborhood and they were able to get a new car. Maybe we should get a new car." And the movie goes along that people keep trying to keep that appetite for those things. And so what Proverbs 13 is saying is that just because you get more and more and more, many times it adds to the difficulties that you have. And living a life of simplicity and being content with the things that we have. Paul said, I know what it means to abound, and I know what it means to be without, and I've learned to be satisfied in both places. And so what Solomon's saying is, if you're acquiring things, if you have this appetite for stuff, just realize that with more stuff comes more grief. And you have to understand that it's never going to fill the hole, that you have to become content in who you are and what you have. And there's a lot of wisdom there too, whether it's relationships or whether it's stuff. If you pursue wealth, do it gradually. And then it will be more likely that if it comes, that it stays. If you're stuck hoping for something, your heart will be sick. But if you go ahead and fulfill your desire, whatever it is, you'll be content. It'll be a tree of life. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. Chapter 13 talks about that we should follow the commandments, listen to the wise, be clever, have good sense, and be a faithful messenger. Failing to follow these instructions will lead to poverty and disgrace, but fools hate to turn away from their evil deeds. Sticking with the wise means you are wise as well. Hanging out with fools makes you a fool. The earnings of the righteous will go to their children, but sinners' wealth end up being inherited by the righteous. Injustice takes food from the fields of the poor, even if they are plentiful. Controversy. Proverbs 13, verse 24 is one of the most, let's look at that verse. Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. This is one of those verses that carry, a lot of different people have debated over, the biggest thing that you have to lock in on for Proverbs chapter 13 is that if as kids are being instructed, if they're left untested, if they're left uncorrected, then they're going to end up in whatever the consequences of that are. And so when this is laid out, like I said before, the rod carries with it different implications according to different people. But the main thing is this, is that if there's no consequences, if you don't give your kids consequences for their actions, then they're going to get the natural consequences of those actions. And so it's like, it's against the law for children to be out and about at midnight, because it's against curfew. It's against law for, a 14-year-old to drive a vehicle, and so if you say to your kid, if you see your kid trying to take the car and you say, this is the punishment for your action, then what you're doing is you're saving that kid from getting the natural consequences, which is they didn't know how to handle the car, so they ended up in a crash. Somebody got really hurt, and now all of a sudden, because they were reckless, their life is turned upside down. So the whole sense of this is that bring consequences to your children so that they don't have to reap the consequences that come from a lifestyle of making those decisions. Proverbs chapter 14. A foolish woman tears down her own house in the end, but a wise woman builds it. Fools hate God and end up beating themselves with their own foolish words. Chapter 14 reminds us that faithful witness tells the truth, that false witnesses tell lies. The faithful witness and the false witness. Fools can never get on the right track. They mock offerings, can't figure out where they're headed, and mislead others. The wise are inclined to follow after right decisions. And a couple of kind of statements that are thrown out there in Proverbs chapter 14, that you can't harvest grain without some oxen. You need to know that. And the individual heart feels own sorrow and pain, but basic emotions and experiences are private to ourselves. So in saying those two things is understanding that when you unpack these chapters, and when you unpack these things, that it's just the simplicity of understanding that making the right decisions leads you in the right direction, and having those tools makes you more inclined to benefit from righteousness. Joy often ends up in grief, and ways that initially seem right turn into lead to ruin. Everyone good and bad are repaid according to their deeds. The simple and foolish believe anything and fail to act with caution, and schemers and quick-tempered people end up going wrong. Poor are disliked, but if you're rich, it's easier to make friends, even if they're false friends. You should be kind to the poor and work instead of talking too much. Telling the truth helps save lives, and fear of God gives both confidence and life. Princes and kings are nothing without the multitude of people upholding and supporting them, and righteousness benefits the whole nation. Having a tranquil mind and not getting angry easily will help you walk out the truths. And also, being wise gets you in company with the king. Proverbs 15. Speaking softly helps calm the wrath of other people. If your tongue is gentle, it's a tree of life. God watches over everything, measuring it all. Fools don't listen to their parents and end up having money issues. Their sacrifices don't please God, but the prayers of righteous do. Remembering that when correction comes, it's good for you if you deal with it, then it'll bring life. God can see into all hearts. Gladness of a heart is good. Sadness is destruction. Cheerfulness is like a continual feast. You create your own enjoyment. It's better not to have too much and still fear God than be overloaded with treasure and trouble. Similarly, it's better to have love and to eat a simple meal of vegetables than to eat a meaty feast while in a mood of hatred. The idea of Moses not being able to go over into the promised land, but to be able to, it says that God took him up on a hill to let him kind of see over in the promised land. And the understanding that it's better to be in a place that you have peace with God than to have all the things that you think you would want and to be without him. Chapter 15, some things that they quickly deal with. Quick temper, laziness, evil plans, foolish children, greed, lack of advisors. In line with the general policy of how the book of Proverbs goes, chapter 15 also talks again about righteousness and the wisdom lead upward from the underworld or Sheol. Righteous people think before they speak, and the wicked just blabber things out. And understanding once again that instruction, if we listen to instruction, and that fearing God is the beginning of wisdom. Chapter 16. Mortals can devise whatever plans they want, but God is the one that determines the end. Talks about the way that God interacts with man, knowing all their innermost thoughts and desires and creating everything for a purpose. The author talks about pride and the unwillingness to trust God. It talks about the importance of loyalty and faithfulness. Chapter 16 talks about the understanding the purposes and understanding that we are from God and that God knows the beginning from the end. I served in National Guard for 9 years, and I was a part of an Army intelligence company, a part of a helicopter battalion. And when I joined the company, there was, it's when we were first going to war with Iraq back in 1990. And so we were put on high alert, and we had to load everything to be set to put on rails to get ready to go in a moment's notice. And we had a packing list, and on the packing list there was an item that was in our mill van, and it just said on the packing list, black thing. And literally that's what it said on the packing list. And so when we were packing it up, I said to somebody, and it was a big heavy thing, and I was like, what is this? And they go, I don't know. It's always been here, so we're responsible for it, so we got to take it with us. And I go, well, what do you use it for? And they go, well, sometimes we eat off of it. Sometimes we put our feet up on it. I was like, okay. So we loaded it up, had a specific place drawn out on the map where it had to go. And for years, that's what we did. And we enjoyed many nice meals around said little black thing that was off to the side. And finally, a new guy joined our unit, and he said, why do y'all have a tank block? We said, a what? He goes, that thing right there. He goes, what you do with that is you take it and you stick it under a tank track so that it doesn't move. And we went, I don't know. And some research revealed that once upon a time the unit had tanks. And so once upon a time they needed these tank blocks. But we had no idea what it was for. But I can tell you this, we never gave it the full purpose that it was intended for, because we weren't the designer. Proverbs chapter 16 lays out a picture that because God designed you, he knows what your purposes are. And if you understand what your purposes are from him, then you'll understand what your real purposes are. There's a lot of people that will try to, Proverbs chapter 16, there's a lot of people that will try to tell you what your purpose is. But you need to get your purpose from God. And that way you'll understand what you're truly designed for. And you won't end up having people eat their meals on you and put their feet on you. Finally, Proverbs, final one we're going to look at, Proverbs chapter 17. Once again, we talk about it's better to have a little dry food and quiet than to have feasting with strife. A slave who acts wisely will end up ruling over foolish children. In the same way that a crucible forges silver and gold, so God tests the heart. People who insult the poor also are insulting God. It talks about in chapter 17 the benefits of forgiving. Grandchildren are like a crown for the grandparents, and parents of children are their glory, meaning they need to know the right and all the time that God has for them. It's better to meet bear mama who's lost its cubs than to meet a fool who's really deep in the folly at that moment. And if you do evil back to someone who did good for you, you're in for destruction. Strife starts like water that begins breaking through a dam and quickly becomes unstoppable. So shut it down before it gains too much momentum. God dislikes the people that condemn the righteous and commend the wicked. Don't make any rash pledges to your neighbor or any pledges at all. And finishing up in Proverbs chapter 17. Verse 19 says, whoever loves a quarrel loves sin. Whoever builds a high gate invites destruction. One whose heart is corrupt does not prosper. One whose tongue is perverse falls into trouble. To have a fool for a child brings grief. There is no joy for the parent of a godless fool. A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries the bones. The wicked accept bribes in secret to pervert the course of justice. A discerning person keeps wisdom in view, but a fool's eyes wander to the ends of the earth. A foolish son brings grief to his father and bitterness to the mother who bore him. If imposing a fine on the innocent is not good, surely to beat honest officials is corrupt. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered. Even fools are thought to be wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. It's an old quote. I think it was from, I want to say it was from Lincoln, but it says better to stay silent and have people think you're wise than to open your mouth and prove that you're not, as we go through the outlining, what I would like for you to do in this class and to help kind of lay out for testing in the future or breaking down in the outlining that you have to do depending on what your criteria is for what class you're doing. I'd like for you to break down the chapters as I gave you the chapters 12, 13, or 8 through 17 tonight. I'd like for you to just kind of break down and give like about 6 bullet points, and it'll be a little bit difficult, but kind of playing off of what I did tonight and what we'll do in the last 2 classes, so that when you're either testing or when you are outlining, you'll be able to kind of have a command of where those are. Another thing that it helps you with is to be able to recount those things when you are looking to speak into specific situations. So if you'll outline, just give like 4 bullet points for each one, and you can use that along the lines of your outlining if that's what's required from you for this class. As Dr. Job said, we'll meet again next week. This class will be finished up virtually, and the last, I think that after the next week, there's immediately another class that starts the following week. So we'll get this tied up, and if you have any issues with that, just contact the school, and they'll be able to direct you. If you have any questions for me, you can always email me through the school, through Dr. Jim, and I'll be happy to kind of look at those things during the week. But let me close with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together. Lord, I thank you for the hearts of these men and women who have taken the time to dive into your word. Lord, I just ask that you give them wisdom, and Lord, that you multiply this time back to them. And I speak blessings to them in Jesus' name. Amen. You may go in peace.